everyone, and welcome back to another video in honor of the Category 4 hurricane that is currently barreling towards the Hawaiian Islands, and because you guys overwhelmingly voted for this subject on YouTube. Today we are going to be talking about the internal hurricane that is our hormones. What I've learned in all of my time of having hormones and trying to manage them is that we can never fully control our hormones. There's nothing that we can do externally to exert control over these necessary, life-giving, and infuriating chemical compounds that float around our body. But what we can do is get out of the way of our bodies from balancing by themselves. So the first major don't for naturally balanced hormones is animal products. I know some people might roll their eyes and think that that's just part of the vegan agenda, but the fact is that animal products contain exogenous hormones, especially animal products that come from mammalian sources. Every time you eat a mammal, you are getting a dose of not only mammalian sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone, you're also getting a major dose of stress hormones, because let's not forget, slaughterhouses are not happy places. And you might think that I'm just talking about factory farmed meat, which is certainly a problem, but these naturally occurring exogenous hormones are found abundantly in all free-range, organic, grass-fed animals as well. All animal products, no matter where they come from, are also really high in saturated fat and trans fats. So saturated fat in animal foods, I'm pretty sure we've all heard about that, and even though there's been a hyped up debate about whether or not saturated fat is actually healthy, the fact is that it's not. And all fats, especially saturated fats, increase your levels of hormones in your body because fat stimulates your own glands to produce more sex hormones. So since a lot of hormonal problems in the westernized world has to do with too much hormones, it'll serve a lot of us to bring down the amount of fat that we're eating. Animal products are also naturally rich in trans fats. You've probably heard of trans fats because they're so pro-inflammatory and so bad for our health, and it's so important that we limit them. But not many people realize or are told that those trans fats are naturally abundant in animal foods. And those saturated fats and those trans fats seriously and negatively impact our body's ability to respond to our own insulin. If you have hormone issues and you've done any amount of research, you know that insulin sensitivity is absolutely vital to balancing sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone, to balancing thyroid hormones, to getting polycystic ovarian syndrome under control. And the fact is that the saturated and the trans fats that are naturally found in all animal foods negatively impact insulin sensitivity. And the absolute worst animal product for hormonal health on the face of this planet is milk. We're mammals. We are dependent on milk when we're babies. Once we're not babies, milk doesn't belong in our bodies. It's hormonally active. Even the all-natural, free-range, raw, unpasteurized stuff increases our levels of insulin-like growth factor. Because milk is for blowing up calves into cows. It's a fluid that promotes a 600-pound weight gain in 1 year. It contains tons of saturated fat, trans fats, growth factors, and most worryingly, it contains galactose. So when we ingest galactose, it has to be broken down by a specific enzyme. In humans, that enzyme is not particularly abundant, which means that a lot of unprocessed galactose circulates throughout the body. What's concerning is that galactose that's in the bloodstream appears to directly damage ovarian tissue, which brings us to our first do for healthy hormones. Whole plant foods. Kate, I accept the challenge. whole plant foods, whole plant foods, whole plant foods, whole plant foods. So when we're eating whole plant foods, we're naturally getting a lot of fiber. When your body is managing your hormone levels, if there are extra hormones floating around in your bloodstream, your liver picks them up, it binds it, and then it flushes it into your intestines, which is where fiber comes into play. Dietary fiber is very absorptive, and it can absorb those hormones and hold tightly onto them as the fiber quickly and efficiently exits the body. I'm talking about pooping. If there's not enough dietary fiber, those excreted hormones can actually be reabsorbed into the bloodstream, where they can wreak havoc, and then the liver has to filter, bind, and excrete them again. I would say I can only imagine how frustrating that would be, except my husband, so I get it. It's also fairly simple to balance your fat intake on a whole plant food diet without all of the animal products or the refined oils or the junk food. The amount of fat that we're eating on a daily basis naturally goes down to where it should be. At that point, our body isn't as stimulated to create excessive hormones. And lower fat whole plant food diets also encourage the production of sex hormone binding globulin, which is a type of protein that binds to excess hormones in the body and helps to flush them out. I'm talking about pooping again. Naturally lower fat levels also helps to increase insulin sensitivity, which is so important to overall human health. Whole plant food diets also have a naturally very good balance of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids, which means that it optimizes your essential fatty acid intake. Since omega-6s are quite pro-inflammatory, we don't want to go too overboard with those. And since omega-3s are actually anti-inflammatory, we want to make sure that we're getting plenty of those too. And those pro-inflammatory omega-6s create cytokines, which are responsible for causing uterine cramps. So if you have terrible cramps, reduce the omega-6. A lot of whole plant foods are also really rich in phytoestrogens. Those are plant estrogens. And plant estrogens have been given a bad name on purpose by the milk and dairy industry to try to scare people away from eating plants. But here's the fact. Phytoestrogens get into our body, and they are capable of occupying our estrogen receptor sites. Those estrogen receptors are found in hormonally sensitive areas of the body, like your ovaries and your breasts, but they can't stimulate those estrogen receptors. And estrogen receptor stimulation is associated with higher risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancers, and other hormonally sensitive cancers. So when a phytoestrogen occupies that estrogen receptor site without stimulating it, it's blocking it from stimulation, and it is protecting us from cancer. These phytoestrogens can also have a really beneficial effect on symptoms of things like PMS and menopause. And now since it's raining and it seems like there's constant helicopter presence, I think that'll about do it for this hormonal do. Which will bring us to our next food-related buzzword in the hormonal health world. Recently, some really illuminating studies on polycystic ovarian syndrome have come out, and they have been implicating AGEs, also known as advanced glycation end products. So I made a video specifically about what AGEs are, where they come from, and how we can reduce them in our diets. I will link that one right up there. So it appears that high levels of AGEs can cause and aggravate symptoms of polycystic ovarian syndrome, which means that it's really important for us to understand where these AGEs come from. Exogenous AGE formation is most common in high-fat and high-protein foods. And you guys, I would love to be more interesting than I am, but that means animal products. When we look at studies that have detailed the AGE levels of certain foods, we see that across the board, animal products are highest. And that is especially true about animal products that have been cooked at high heat and with dry cooking methods. Frying, roasting, grilling, pan-searing, broiling, basically anything except gross boiled chicken breast. and that's still not great. However, there are high protein and high fat plant foods as well. So if you're on a whole plant food diet, that means you're probably eating foods like nuts and seeds and maybe tofu from time to time, and these foods are unquestionably healthy. However, roasted versions of nuts are exponentially higher in AGEs than our plain and raw nuts. So unfortunately, that means that we might have to control our peanut butter intake. No, the peanuts aren't the issue. I need to know if they're roasted. No! Why? Is there even a point left to living? It's a tough break, I know. You've already given up so much. Peanut butter now? Peanut butter? Really? But if you have messed up ovaries, peanut butter seems like a small sacrifice. It's whole plant foods. Not only are whole plant foods low in exogenous AGEs, but they also help to prevent the formation of endogenous AGEs. Those are the ones that our bodies make, because whole plant foods are really rich in fiber, which helps to moderate the digestion of dietary carbohydrates, and they are high in antioxidants, which can help to neutralize the formation of AGEs. So though the solution may feel a bit boring and repetitive, at least it's fairly simple. So those are the dietary related do's and don'ts for naturally balanced hormones. And now that those are taken care of, I am going to go do some dietary related things and get myself some breakfast. Breakfast time, which means somebody showed up. So there you have it. I have a nice fruity breakfast. If you guys watch my videos, you know I am a huge fan of fruit. A lot of people say that fruit has too much sugar and it'll mess up your insulin levels, and that's an argument to go through on another day. So right now, I'm just talking about my experience. I got the PCOS diagnosis. I had the hypothyroid diagnosis. I was having crazy blood sugar swings, so my insulin was really messed up. I felt terrible, and I was on a high protein and moderate fat diet to try to control that, and I just kept getting worse. And then I switched to what was essentially a fruit-based diet, and I loved it, and my body responded so well. And within 6 months, I felt like what I think normal people must feel like. And a really low-fat, fruit-based diet is what got me there. Now, that's not the kind of diet that I eat nowadays. I just eat like your standard whole plant food diet. And I eat a little bit more fat than I used to, but I made plenty of videos about fat, so they'll be linked. I do know of many people who report that their hormones balanced out on a higher fat plant-based diet. And sometimes those people say that they don't like eating fruit and that it doesn't agree with them. So I think what a good take-home message would be is hormones are excessively complicated and tremendously interconnected. And the ways that our bodies function and our own personal hormones interact is extremely unique to us. And there's one person who knows how to get your hormones balanced, and that's your body. So listen to her. I can cite the scientific studies that say that lower fat diets are great for hormone balance. I can talk about my own experience, but it's your body and it's your hormones and it's your balance. And I believe wholeheartedly that your body knows exactly what to do to get itself into balance and to thrive. That's exactly what my body knew how to do once I got out of its way. And I did that with whole plant foods. So I have plenty of fruit, I have a few different varieties, and then I added about 2 tablespoons of freshly ground flaxseed. A lot of people who are familiar with plant-based diets know that flax seeds are really high in omega-3 precursor fatty acids. Those are highly anti-inflammatory. That's part of why I'm eating it. The other reason why I'm having these flax seeds is that flax seeds are extremely high in phytoestrogens, and including flax seeds in my diet on essentially a daily basis has made a really significant difference in my body's ability to hormonally regulate herself. I added them to my diet about 2 years ago, and the change was very noticeable. So there are some specific things that you can add to your diet that can be really helpful for hormone balance. But what might be even more important is removing things that can disturb your hormone balance. Which brings us to our next don't of hormonal health. Don't expose yourself to avoidable environmental pollutants and chemicals. I say avoidable because at this point in Earth's history, there's only so much we can do to completely eliminate hormonally disruptive inputs from our lives. Compounds like PCBs, dioxin, BPA, phthalates. These are all pretty potent hormone disruptors. They are everywhere at this point. We can't avoid them 100%, but there are some particularly potent sources of these toxins. Animal products! Again, I totally have a vegan agenda, but this isn't even part of my vegan agenda. This is just fact. These hormone disrupting chemicals are generally speaking fat soluble. They build up in the fatty tissues of animals, including our fatty tissues. Like, I wouldn't eat humans either. Just to be perfectly honest, we're toxic. But it happens to cows, it happens to chickens, it happens to pigs, and it definitely happens to fish. So when we eat the bodies of animals, we eat the bioaccumulated toxins that they were exposed to throughout their lifetimes. The interesting, maybe profoundly scary thing, I don't know, I haven't decided, is that there's one way for animals, including humans, to get rid of these toxins, and that is through milk production. So yes, that's absolutely what I'm saying. If you drink milk, you are literally drinking bioaccumulated toxins. But maybe you already got rid of the animal products, in which case, good job. But there are still some other sources of these types of hormonally disruptive chemicals that we need to be on the lookout for on our plant-based diet. Food packaging leach hormonally disruptive chemicals into the foods that they come into contact with. This is especially an issue with fatty foods and wet foods and acidic foods. Fortunately, a lot of the whole plant foods that are available to us, like fresh fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, we can get them without them being in plastic packaging. For products that we can't avoid that are packaged, like canned goods, just make sure that you're getting a brand that doesn't use BPA liners on their cans. Food packaging also includes the way that we store our food at home. So I do my best to store our food, like leftovers, in glass or stainless steel containers. I try to avoid plastic if at all possible, and I do my utmost to never put hot foods in plastic containers. And then water. The Environmental Watch Group has a fantastically terrifying page where you can go in and enter your zip code and then... In all seriousness though, a lot of stuff gets into the tap water, including a lot of synthetic hormones like birth control pills, because ladies take those pills and then they pee them into the municipal water and then it's recycled. And those kind of drug residues just stay. They just stay. An alternative a lot of people choose is bottled water, which interestingly enough often turns out to be even dirtier than just tap water. And then there's plastic contamination, both the plastics from leaching from the bottle, and then apparently a bunch of bottled water brands were found to have little plastic particles just floating in there. So in my opinion, bottled water is not an option. Another huge source of hormonally disruptive chemicals is in beauty products and fragrances. Most beauty products and fragrances that are found at like drugstores or department stores are absolutely saturated with really funky toxic chemicals. We barely know what they do individually, and it's really scary when we start to think about what they do synergistically. If you have questions about the beauty products that you use, the Environmental Watch Group has an amazing database of beauty products that lists every single ingredient and tells you how toxic they are. It's really great. Along similar lines, clothes. A lot of clothes are actually made out of plastics nowadays. and then we just keep them up against our skin all day long. If your clothes aren't made out of plastic, maybe it's made out of cotton, and since cotton is one of the most intensively pesticide-drenched crops on the planet, we can be exposed to a lot of funky stuff through the clothes we wear too. On top of that, we have cleaning products, including laundry detergents, but other things like bathroom cleaners, kitchen cleaners, mirror cleaner, car wash, car wax. Ugh, just thinking about it all kind of makes my head hurt. And then when I think about the fact that the average consumer is being exposed to literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of chemicals every day, I just want to curl up in a little ball and be blasted into outer space where I can die of solar radiation just to get it over with. So before I get too deep into my galactic suicide fantasy, let's talk about what we can do to promote our hormonal health naturally. Again, Kate, whole plant foods. Shout out to Kate, you're being such a good sport, I hope. Maybe she's deeply offended, I hope not. Whole plant foods, especially if you can afford organic plant foods, that means much less accumulation and bioaccumulation of toxic chemicals. They also, generally speaking, mean less packaging and less plastics exposure. There's also a beautiful, exciting world of all natural cosmetics. There are many companies who make fantastic products, although I do, generally speaking, always run something that I'm thinking about buying through the Environmental Watch Group database just to make sure. And I'm a big fan of DIY beauty products where I know all the ingredients that are going on my body. A good water filter is a phenomenal investment. Over a year ago, I picked up a Berkey water filter. I'm hugely satisfied with it. Really impressed with the testing that it went through. I made a video about it and I will link down below. I like to buy organic cotton clothes whenever possible. I recently did a video with Pact, a brand that has organic fair trade cotton clothes that are also pretty darn affordable. I also like to thrift most of the clothes that I buy. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, you probably know that I find a fair amount of clothing on the side of the road or at the beach because drunk people. And then when I'm cleaning my house, I do my best to use all natural cleaners. My favorite one is just straight up vinegar and water with like a little bit of lemon essential oil. I definitely have to scrub a little bit more, but I'm not getting cancer, so it's great. So that will do it for that do. I will see you guys later for lunch.